Hello, welcome, and happy Valentine. My name is Mario Bernardi, and today I will take you to Magic Venice. Now, to do so, we do this virtual tours on Zoom, but today we had an overwhelming response. Hence, it would have been difficult technically to have hundreds and hundreds of people on the Zoom app. So what we're doing, we are broadcasting it via the YouTube channel, the Grand Tour Europe, and also the Facebook group, virtual experiences. My name is Mario Bernardi. Again, happy Valentine. This is a gift from us to you of the Grand Tour. Now, I will be using a blend of different medias in order to recreate an experience that is as immersive as possible. I will tell you some part of the story of some of the great Venetian monuments and churches and buildings and hidden secret areas, but also I will give you a general context of the city. Why is the city so important? Why it's so famous? Why it's one of the most popular tourist destinations, or at least it was until COVID hit hard. And I'm just about to share the screen again, including the sounds. And of course, you could see the Grand Tour Europe is, since the pandemic started in February last year, we started doing this virtual tours and experience, which now run weekly, Saturday and Saturday. My name is Mario Bernardi. I've been guiding groups and leading tours for the past 20 years. And I have a personal story connected to Venice. So for me, it's very, very important. And of course, it's also a very romantic story. And so if you bear with me, at the end of the tours, I might mention that. I'm not sure about that still. And we will just, yes, we have just some people not in the right link. There were some problems with the link, I guess. Let me just double check that. Giovanni, you tell me when everybody's is ready, and then let's just start with just mentioning what we do and what we are. So the Grand Tour Europe is a small boutique tour operator. Basically, what we do, we bring arts and culture to life by basically providing unique, bespoke, private guided tours, educational and cultural tours, business events and incentives, and also we started in the beginning of 2020 virtual experiences and virtual guided tours. And you're about to sample one of our guided tours. Every month we do a free tour in English and a free tour in Italian, so you're free to join to all of this. Also, unique travel experiences, small group but not for a while, and exclusive tours and private all-inclusive tours. And this is just reminds me of one of my recent trips to Venice on a speedboat, not on the gondola, because the gondola is nice, but speedboat gets you places. And let's start with just an aerial overview of the city of Venice. Let me just exit from the presentation. I can just show you from here, because I would like to give a suggestion. Most people might not do this that way, but I think the best way to get to Venice, most people get to Venice, either using, the train or the bus to basically a man-made bridge that was built in the 19th century to connect Venice with the mainland, or by Vaporetto, which is like this kind of ferry. But the real and unique way to get to Venice is in style. I mean, this is from the movie Casino Royale, where 007, in this case Daniel Craig, gets to Venice on a sailboat. So maybe the sailboat might not be for everyone, but definitely you need to get to Venice by water, because that's the way to do it. That's how you appreciate and you actually understand the connection that Venice has with its waters. Venice is not simply a city that it's surrounded by canals. The city, it's actually built on water, which means that water, it's what keeps it alive and what makes Venice what it is. So without the water, Venice would be just another city. And the main thing that you feel when you get there is that the silence, the quietness, no cars, no trucks, no, there are crowds, there were crowds, of course, and some of the boats there of course they have engines, there is a back noise, but it's the quietness of a city built on waters. With everything, it's kind of smooth and elegant, and it's that kind of rhythm which is dictated by the water. Now, I will just get to the Vivaldi, not yet. We'll have that later. Let me get that back to the drone, and we are going to fly over Venice now, and I'll be able to tell you why, in the first place, Venice is built in the center of the lagoon. Now, before we do this, let me just give you a bird's eye view of the lagoon. So I'm just using Google Maps now. You can see Venice Lagoon is this kind of shallow waters where a number of rivers, including the Brenta and a few others, the Piave, now it runs outside the lagoon, but till not long ago just was adding water to the lagoon. It was a number of man-made diversions that let less water getting into the lagoon over the time. Anyway, you can see all the waters running to the lagoon, these kind of shallow waters that are under these kind of two pressures, fresh water from mainland, and then the basically the tide getting in from the opening, that basically there are three large openings between the lagoon and the open sea, the Mediterranean Sea. This part of the Mediterranean Sea is called Adriatic Sea, and Venice just floats there in the middle. It's basically a city built on 117 islands, little islands, connected by over 400 bridges. And today it is a lot more pedestrians than it used to be. In fact, in the last 200 years, many of its former canals, especially the teeny narrow ones in between the little islands, they've been buried, and in order to transform it into walkable paths. The most notable one is this one here, the so-called Lista di Spagna. If you've been to Venice by train, you know the train station Santa Lucia, which was built at the end of 19th century during the Austrian rule, when basically Venice was under the Austrian Empire. This walkway here that goes from the train station all the way around, and basically if you keep walking long enough, you get through a number of mazes. Like here, you get basically to St. Mark's Square. It's called Lista di Spagna. The first part is called Lista di Spagna. And then there is the Grand Canal, the main waterway, which like as a snake crosses enough the center of Venice. And overall, the city of Venice has the shape of a fish. In fact, it is a fish. And what more appropriate shape than the fish for a city built on water, with the Sestriere, the neighborhood of Castello, being the tail here, but it is also the arsenal. This area was basically the shipyard building facility of the Republic of Venice, which was basically, its power was built on trade and on the military naval power. And then, of course, the Piazza San Marco, San Marco Square. Now, let's start flying over with this drone footage during one of the last floods. This was done at the beginning. This was done at the beginning of the lockdown, and basically you can see this is some of the floods. Venice was badly affected by the floods, especially last year, and I'll mention that too. And this is San Marco Square. This is actually last year. It was actually on the Piazza San Marco. Now, Piazza San Marco is the only square of Venice, which is basically named after the which is called a piazza. Most of them are called campo or campiello. So you could see is that basically it's a large public square with no individual or private statues dedicated to one man, a ruler, a king, a queen, a pope, nothing like that. And this is the thing that the Venetians were most proud of, being a republic since the very origins of the history of Venice. Now, Venice was created in the 5th century AD, the traditional anniversary of the creation of Venice, it's 421, so will be just 1600 years since Venice was created. And this was basically due to the barbarian invasions. Most of the people living on the mainland in Grado, Aquileia, they had to leave. There were large Roman cities with tens, hundreds of thousands of inhabitants. And during the raids of the Huns, of the Goths, they had to move somewhere else because their life was at risk. We're just flying towards the Bridge of Sighs now, just behind the Doge's Palace. And this created basically the necessity for this locals to move in the lagoon where it was safe, because the barbarians were not really going to get a boat to divert. They just wanted to go down south, and so they were destroying and kidnapping and raping and looting as they were passing by. But they would not reach the lagoon, as they were also not very skilled in sailing. And there wasn't much to do in the lagoon. The only thing that they could do was to dry the salty waters and get salt, and then trade some fish that they had. So this forced them to be traders, and hence they made trade a success. Venice was the most powerful the greatest economic power in the Middle Ages, the gateway to the East to trade spices and precious, the Silk Road and all the precious trades between the East and the West and the Middle East passed through Venice for almost 1,000 years. Of course, with the discovery of the Americas and the new routes around Africa, starting from 1500, the city started to fade and became extremely decadent. But they made sure that they keep enjoying the wealth that they had, and they keep enjoying their success. So Venice became one of the main tourist destination ever since the 1700s, with thousands of nobles from all over Europe spending time for its carnivals, for its shows, its theaters, its art, especially its entertainment, of which the carnival was a big part. Now I'm going to post this, and we are going to discover now some of its monuments. Of course, I won't be doing won't be doing a lecture, or won't be doing a complete discovery, but at least I'm going to show you the most important things. First of all, Piazza San Marco, as I said, and we can go just to Piazza San Marco with a panoramic picture, where you could see that basically the piazza is a long rectangular square with the procuratie, which is where now some of them are, the one on the right are probably owned by the insurance company Generali from Venice, and the other two wings are basically the host museums, and there is the library on the left down there. And the procuratie were basically a symbol of the Republic, where there were no statues and no nothing dedicated to one single man or one single person. This was all dedicated to the community. That's why you won't see a statue of a doge, of a ruler. The doges were the elected rulers of Venice, which was a kind of a lifetime president elected for life, which ruled and acted as a king in the end, but was re-elected every time he died, so he didn't become a family thing. And of course, the symbol of the power, the Doge's Palace on the right, and the Basilica of St. Mark's in the center, which is the result again of over 1,000 years of construction, reconstruction, rebuilding. It's a very peculiar church, because it's really a mixture between the East and the West, between Arabic and Islamic art and the Christian Romanesque and Gothic style. So it's really kind of a melting pot of the Mediterranean at that time. Now, I have prepared on the presentation some of the images. We could see, first of all, in one of the niches on the facade of the dome, you can actually see a mosaic. These are translations of the body of a martyr. The Cathedral of St. Mark was basically created on the sorry, there are problems on the connection. Can you hear me? It's on Facebook, on YouTube. So basically, you could see the facade all decorated with mosaic and this peculiar shaped domes, a kind of a kufi kind of dome. So if we go back on the Basilica, this is the translation again, the procession again, and when you have this large painting with basically all the gilded facade and the mosaic. The mosaic had been redone many times. So the first one on the left is one of the few original ones, but the others were redone as late as the 17th and 18th century. Of course, on the facade there are the symbols of the. Let me just get inside. The symbol of the power of the Republic, the Lions of St. Mark's, and then the 4 horses. Now from here we might see it better. So you could see the Lion of St. Mark's, and the Basilica of St. Mark is now the Cathedral of Venice, but it wasn't. It was basically the chapel connected with the palace here on the right, the Palazzo Ducale, the Doge's Palace, and which also was the place where the magistrates were and most important public offices were held, not just the Doges. And the Basilica was built probably on a pre-existing church in the 9th century. In 828, the Venetian took the body of the relics of St. Mark the Evangelist from Alexandria in Egypt. It was shipped to, it was smuggled actually out of the country into Venice, and ever since then it became the patron saint. Beforehand they had a different patron saint. Now at the end of the square towards the sea, towards the Chiesa di San Giorgio, there are 2 pillars. These also were had the long story. These pillars, I'll mention them shortly. And on them, there's the Lion of St. Mark on the left, looking east, facing east, and a knight killing a dragon, which most people might think is St. George. It is not. It's Santo Daro, as we say in Venetian, which was looking towards the mainland. So it was basically, they were protecting the 2 potential enemies of Venice that might have been coming from the mainland or might coming from the sea. And Santo Daro, it was the Byzantine protector of Venice since its origins, but then it was basically, as the most important saint came in, St. Mark's became its patron saint. You can see there are 4 bronze horses on the facade, and this is also connected with the story of the 2 columns. Now, if you look at the water from here, you can see that there are 2 pillars. Originally, there should have been 3. These are Roman pillars that were looted or taken in the 1200s. The Venetian joined the Crusades, and during the 4th Crusade, instead of going to the Holy Land, they stopped and they looted the Constantinople, Byzantius, and they took a number of statues and a number of objects, including 3 columns. 2 of them are standing here. The third one, during the operation to downloading it here on a bank, basically sank on a bank. They were never able to recover that, but it might still be down there somewhere. So that's another thing for the future to recover. And they're beautiful monolithic columns. It's something very, very, very rare. And in that occasion, also the horses were taken from Constantinople to Venice, and the horses didn't stop their travels there. Now let me just see if I can find. Yes, they're here. So we are just on the first floor outside of the Basilica of St. Mark here. So this beautiful ornated columns, capitals. It's like an architectonical lace, all decorated with gilded mosaics. And basically, yes, it's here. So we are now on the front. Right on the front, there are these 4 giant horses. Now, these ones are presently outside are modern copies. The original ones are inside. There's a small museum on the first floor of the Basilica, and you can actually enter and see them. It's right here. The inside, where you can see the inside of the Basilica, entirely covered with mosaic. There's no 1 inch that is uncovered. There's a mosaic with the Godfather. These were made in the 16th century. Down there, you see there are the original horses, which had some of the original gold part. Now, these horses were taken by the French during the Napoleonic period. The Napoleon's troop in 1797 actually attacked Venice, and Venice surrendered without even fight. And the last Doge wanted to go in exile, but he couldn't leave the city. So he ended up his days in his house, not being able to leave, because of course he is the one who surrendered the city without fighting. So the Venetian, every time they saw him in the streets, they would have insulted him and attacked him. So he had to basically be kept. He would basically spend the rest of his life, at the end of his days, indoors. Anyway, Napoleon, amongst many artworks and masterpieces that had won it as a trophies from the war, and spoils from the war, took this one to the Louvre as well. Luckily, after the French period, after the end of Napoleon, after 1815, they were returned to Venice, where they're still there. Anyway, they originally not from Venice. They came from Constantinople, from the Hippodrome, which was decorated with many, many marble statues of different animals. And also there was this beautiful chariot with these 4 bronze horses that, of course, the Venetian took. It's not the only thing. They took a few other stuff, but I think it's time to have another look at the inside of the Basilica. As I said, it's completely covered with mosaic, and it has a very kind of peculiar feel, because it looks more like a Byzantine church or an Eastern church, rather than basically a Catholic Roman church. And in fact, because of its connection with Byzantium, the Basilica of St. Mark's and many Venetian churches are the Church of Venice is basically very similar to the Orthodox Church. In fact, the Bishop of Venice is called the Patriarch. And the mosaics span a few centuries. There are basically 3 main domes in the center that remind us of the Trinity, with the Pentecost, with the Virgin Mary, and with Christ here, surrounded by a number of saints. So you have basically this kind of divide of the space according to a kind of a political narrative. And then there are 2 more on the side, so for a total of 5. And it's quite peculiar the way this space moves. It's kind of dark on its side, but because of the mosaics, it kind of lights up with all this kind of glitter. The floor also is amazing, although most of it is covered for a reason. It's also a very complex marble network. Now we go back to the image. At the beginning of 20th century, the bell tower actually collapsed, just for damages over the centuries. And then instantly it was turned into rubble. So it was completely rebuilt. But of course, following the original project, this is the picture dated back on times when you have the bell tower basically collapse. And you can see that I mentioned that sorry, I have a little sip of wine from the Veneto region, of course, the Marone. Just because I don't really like the taste of water much. And so the burials of the remains of St. Mark's at some point disappeared. They couldn't find them in the city. And what happened is that they find them centuries later, buried somewhere else in the church, actually in the crypt. And this is the mosaic that shows the a consecration of the altar. And you can see up here the dux, the doge, which is basically duce means basically the leader. So that's where the political leadership of Venice originates from, the doge, which was elected with a very complex system, which included a number of 12-year-old boys being gathered in the church, being chosen, and then one was selected to get the name out of a ballot with a kind of a mix of an electoral system. It was a mix between the casting a vote and basically fishing out a name of amongst a number. So basically a number of decision, but also of something that was just casual. Now, this is the plan of the St. Mark's Basilica. You can see it's quite peculiar. And then it has these domes that are kind of flat in the center, pretty perfectly hemispherical, but then they're quite higher with the wooden structure supporting it, and then being covered with lead on the top. Now, this is not a European or an Italian or Venetian system. This was a Fatimidic system. So it was something developed by the Arabs that the Venetian, through trade, but also through the Crusade, learned and then brought back to Europe. So this is one of the symbol of this sort of osmosis between the European world and the Middle Eastern Arabic world and Islamic art through Venice, and also the mosaic as the testimony of that. So this is the cross section of the basilica inside, and of course of the domes. And this is how the early stage of the Romantic style construction would have looked like before the mosaic and everything. So something very different than today, all completely covered with mosaics and with marbles, which made it very, very precious and definitely very, very unique. This is the pictures, the images of the mosaics inside, with the Jesus Christ and the angels, the disciples, the Virgin Mary. And this is the Pentecost, with the basically the Holy Ghost descending on the apostles, which is represent the mission of the church. This is actually the crypt underneath, so there's also a level underneath when you can go. And the Basilica of St. Mark's, as I said, it was basically connected with the Doge's palace, which served also as a court of justice, and served also as a place of residence and a political election. Now, the palace has inside a huge room called Sala del Maggior Consiglio, where basically the political decisions were taken by the 1,000 nobles, which were listed in the Libro d'Oro, which was this kind of list of the Venetian noble families. And once a year, from the Palazzo Ducale, as you can see in this painting here, the Doge was making basically a ceremony on his golden ship. There was a full gilded ship, wooden gilded ship, which was basically called Bucintoro. You can see amongst the gondolas, which was basically taking the Doge to the waters, and then he was casting a ring into the waters by representing the marriage with the sea, symbolizing this strong net between the city of Venice and its waters. And it's an immensible landmark, the bell tower here, that is also a system with on the occasion of the Epiphany, the 6th of January, there are these Magi kings that comes around and outside of the doors, and basically they create a kind of procession while these man hammer and on the top. And of course, there's the symbol of St. Mark's, the lion of St. Mark's, which is a symbol of St. Mark's the Evangelist, and down beneath, not just the hours, but also the astronomical system. So it's a very complex. One of the very first watchtowers in Europe was built towards the end of the 1400s, and then again the Doge's Palace with the large windows facing, of course, the sea, and the last loggia, which is on 2 stories and has this kind of, again, architectural lace. Now, later on in the 1500s, they had to expand the prisons, the jail, and there the prison building was built on the right. That's when they built the Ponte dei Sospiri, the Bridge of Sight, which is the Bridge of Sights, which is this one here. And it's basically, let me see if I can get down here. It's basically a two-way system to connect this building with the building where there was a court of justice. They also had prison on the roof, but there wasn't enough space. Hence, the bridge was the last time the prisoners saw the outside world through its windows, and then they were siding. That's why it's called bridge of sides, not because one sides when it seizes or when it takes a selfie or picture. So that is not what we meant there. The bridge has also a story that I'll tell you in a minute. Before, I'll show you the inside here, which is basically the Salone del Maggior Consiglio, this large room completely covered with paintings by masterpieces by Veronese on the ceiling, by Tintoretto in the last one at the end. There is the basically the glory of the paradise. And in the room, I have to, let me just get inside we can go inside the Doge's palace. They're using this. We can use Google to get right inside of Doge's palace, and you could see, I show you just the inside from here. There is the Scala d'Oro because of all the gold and the gilded part that takes to the first floor. That's when you basically go inside. It's now a museum. It's open for tours, and you could see inside on the Hall of the 500s. The palace went on fire in 1577, right after the Black Death, the plague. So it wasn't a great time to be around. It was 1575. There was a big plague that killed about a third of the population of at least 50,000 Venetians. And this is how it looks today. The palace, the Hall of the Maggior Consiglio, which was rebuilt. And you can see how intricate. These are all canvases on the ceiling held by these frames, and then on the top there's kind of a ship-like beams and system that suspends all these large canvases. This is the Glory of Venice by Veronese, and then there is this huge canvas, one of the largest, or even the largest great master painting. Tintoretto painted it at the end of his career between 78 and 80, in the 1580s. And it's about 22 meters wide, which is some 70 feet wide, and it's 7 meters tall. It's about nearly 30 feet tall. So it's really, really huge, one of the largest, and represents the Last Judgment, basically the glory of the saints, with hundreds and hundreds of figures, which reflects the crowds, the number of people that were in Venice. And on the sides there are large battle scenes which celebrate all the military deeds of the Republic of Venice. Now, if we go, there are around on the top right here all portraits of all the doges since the very beginning of the Republic. As you can see, all listed there with the names, and except right here in the corner, there is one that is covered by a black cloth with his name. It was a doge that in the Middle Ages he tried, Marin Faliero, who tried basically to overthrow the Republic and turn it into a kind of monarchy. So as an eternal shame, his name in his portrait covered by black cloth is there. So the Venetians do not forget. There is a secret itinerary that you could take that goes behind the scenes of the palace, which goes to the courtrooms, it goes to the torture rooms, and a number of rooms, including the parts underneath the ceiling, which of course are made with large beams. We are right here above the whole of the Palazzo del Maggior Consiglio, so the room of the Maggior Consiglio, the main meeting hall, which is, you see, there are hundreds and hundreds of beams. Of course, all this shipbuilding technology was also used in this case. Of course, there are no trees in Venice, so they had to rely on the mainland, to the Alps nearby, to for the constant supply of wood. That's why they needed to be traders. They need to import valuable goods in order to have a good reason. Later on in the 1500s, Venice turned around towards the mainland as the Turks were advancing, and the military power in the east became thinner and thinner, and their possession became smaller and smaller. At some point, Venice ruled the island of Cyprus, the Peloponnesus, so part of Greece, and they had outposts in the Near East, in Byzantium, but by the end of 1500, they lost that all. So Venice turned to the mainland, and then they expand in the countryside, in the province, in the region of Veneto and the Lombardy. And one thing that was very peculiar of the Venetian political system was the tax system, which was extremely efficient, relying on a network of very efficient spies. And in fact, in many parts of Venice, including in the Doge's Palace, you can find this kind of letterbox with kind of an ugly face. And these are secret, basically, it was possible for letters if you wanted to tell that someone didn't pay their taxes, or they were richer than they disclosed to the government, you can actually accuse them in an anonymous way. So that's why there were secret letters that were posted through these halls, and then the Venetian governments they had a look into their affairs to make sure everybody contributed with a fair share. So it was a really serious matter, taxes in the Republic of Venice. You didn't want to avoid taxes, although they had other system to basically make sure that people didn't pay them. As I said, the bridge of sides that you can see here behind on the right, there's the back side of the Palazzo Ducale, was the way that was used by the prisoners. If you do a tour of the Palazzo, you walk both ways, one way in and another way out, and you can see the prison cells, which are pretty bare. One thing very peculiar to the Venetian justice is when you were condemned for whatever crime, which could also be like an ideologic crime, so you could be condemned by the Inquisition for believing in something rather than someone else, so they could make it all up as well. They didn't tell you how long you were sentenced for. So you could get a sentence of a month or 10 years. When you entered there, you didn't know. So that's why the prisoners were citing a lot, because until the day they were told, okay, you're free to go, they wouldn't even know. And this had a peculiar affection on Casanova, probably one of the most famous Venetians, maybe including if you compare to Vivaldi, maybe, which was he started his career as a priest, but he was very successful as a priest. And although he was very successful as a womanizer, someone who really made, thousands of women falling in love. Now, he was arrested several times. He spent time in his 20s. He was arrested once for a month, but he also always had rich patrons getting him out of jail. Anyway, he was arrested for a more serious crime at some point, and he was condemned to several months in jail by the Inquisition. So it wasn't that heavy, although he wasn't highborn, but he had the protection of his father, if he was born on a relationship between Grimani, and the mother was an actress. And so Grimani always, helped him and was always there to support him. And Casanova entered the Piombi, the jail inside the Palazzo Ducale, but he managed to escape. And he managed to escape using a bowl of pasta with butter. And the story is quite long, but to make it short, he was able to bribe one of the guards with that bowl of pasta, and then make sure that his jailmates were cooperating. He was able to make a hole in the roof, walk through the roof into another room, and get out of the room with a simple mantle on top, which he got from a guard they bribed. And then he was able in the morning to walk out on the main staircase, on the main doors of the Palazzo Ducale, right into San Marco Square, and then take the way to the outside. Now, Casanova is certainly one of the most famous figures of Venetian history, because we actually connect him with the of course the seduction, the fun and the mystery, all the masquerade. Now, this time we are in the last days of Carnival right now. Although the Carnival in Venice lasted several weeks, they had 6 public theaters. They had operas all the time, so it was really a place where to party. And we are using now this virtual panoramic view to get on a gondola with masked people, as you would do, you see. And what was all about the mask, and what was all about this with the masquerade, of course, was a way for the nobles to get mixed with travelers, with visitors, and with locals, and they could behave a bit more freely. So it was a kind of a party for all. And of course, the mask became kind of one of the distinctive elements of the Venetian life, especially the underground life. And so with the Casanova, its music, its opera, all the masks became kind of a peculiar trait. This, since the Middle Ages, but it became really something big in the 18th century, when thousands of nobles from Central and Northern Europe were coming to Venice to enjoy shows and to enjoy the masquerade, as still tourists do today. This was a couple of years ago. Of course, this year is not possible to do something like that. You can see all the crowds. Many Venetians get dressed and go and mix with the people, and they would have had private parties back then, where the nobles could go there, without having to live up to a certain reputation. They could just, try to seduce whatever they wanted. So it was more about being quite promiscuous. And this is the gondola, which is now used mostly, or it's not exclusively, by tourists. But back in times, this was the way the nobles kind of get around in the city. They had their own private gondolier in a kind of a high uniform, and then the gondolas were covered. They had kind of something covering on top. Of course, now you won't see them because you can't see anything from there, but as you could see in the paintings, it was the one at the beginning, they were covered by a tent. They are black by law since the 17th century, because some of them, they were gilded, they were bright red, they were very luxurious, so they didn't really wanted them to be another show off for the local wealthy Venetians. So what happened? We are back on the Grand Canal here. What happened is that basically the gondolas became all black, and so there was no one making a difference. You could see that the peculiar shape that is basically still the way the Venetians make the gondolas now. Now, there is a place in central Venice, let me just get off this, that is called Squero, and is right here by Campo San Trovaso. It's right off the bridge of the Accademia, right off here, the wooden bridge that goes, basically, this is the Accademia Gallery that has a number of Venetian artworks. Right behind it, there is a canal, and you can see there is a Squero. It's basically a gondola building yard, but still today they manufacture and they do the gondolas. It's not, I mean, I have seen groups of tourists in there, but they're not very, because they actually work in that, they don't really like any visitors. We're just zooming in now, not into the wall. Let's just turn around. Okay, you could see over there the square where they're building the gondola. The gondola has to be balanced, because being used by, gondolier, being able to stand and basically being able to maneuver it in the Venetian way, which basically touches the bottom, the floor of the lagoon. The lagoon, it's only like 3-4. Most of the canals about 3-4 feet deep, and on average the lagoon is about less than 7 feet deep. So the main canal, the Canale della Giudecca here, it's been dug out in order to let the large ship and like this one here, the large ship and the cruise ship that dock here, the harbor here, to cross through the Canale della Giudecca. But this naturally would have been shallow waters. It's been artificially dug just for the purpose of letting like the cruise ships driving through, which is, some of them are really, really big. It looks really, really, I have to say, it doesn't really look very good when you are in Venice and you see. It might look good from the ship, but from people on land, it doesn't really look, because it's really towering. It's really something not great. One of the main things that people have, I hope they have good memories, but maybe some don't have some good memories. It's the cafes. The oldest one, it's here. The first one on the left is the Café Florian, which was established in 1720, which means it's been constantly in business since, for the last over 300 years. So it's really something. I hope they can survive this pandemic. I have, let me just open this up. I have a presentation here. Let me just see through deck, and Yes, we are inside the Cafe Floriana. It was redecorated in the 19th century. So what you see, this kind of mixture between Baroque and Arabesque, it's all something like a kind of eclectic decoration of the 19th century. It's really, really, really nice. It's quite expensive, like coffee at the table. The bar coffee costs like a couple of euros in Italy, but at the table here you can share easily 15 euros. So, but it's a good coffee though. And of course, it's beautiful to have music and it's wonderful, but don't expect it to be something like Starbucks. You know, it's very, 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 very expensive. And we go, although for Italian standards, Starbucks is quite expensive too. So there are several rooms with several teams, several, and there's a typical cafe of the with that kind of 18th, 19th century atmosphere. Although it was established in the 1700s, the first cafes in Europe were established in the 17th century. Now, if we go across the Canale della Giudecca right here, there's the Church of La Salute, which basically this was designed as a thanksgiving for the plague. There are two churches designed for that purpose. There was a large plague in 1575, for which they built the Church of the Redentore, which was built by Palladio, which is this one down here, which I will talk later. And then the Santa Maria della Salute, which is a beautiful Baroque church designed by Baldassare Longhena. And he's basically an octagonal church that has a very tall Baroque dome. So it's very, again, it's another main landmark. And in front of it, there is the old sea customs, this building here, former warehouses. And behind it, this kind of constructions that look like warehouses, they were the Casoni del Sale. This is where the most precious product of the sea was kept, the salt. We still today use the word salary for your pay, because in ancient times people were paid in salt. It was so valuable and so easy to spend and so universally accepted. And so this was like where all the salt was stored. Now the custom is not used anymore, and it's been turned into a museum of contemporary art, which is now on a loan to the Pinot Foundation. But in the past, this was basically a part of the government. And next to it, not far along the Calan, this is the area of Dorso Duro. It's called this part of Venice, and there is another quite a peculiar building. This doesn't stand outdoor. It's the Guggenheim Museum. It's Palazzo Venier de Leoni, which is an unfinished Venetian mansion. This was basically only the ground floor was built, and then later on it was basically acquired by Peggy Guggenheim, which made it into basically her mansion, and eventually became a sort of museum. And now it's a museum of contemporary art. And let's just go. I think Facebook has some problems today, but there would be the recording. Maybe if those who are on Facebook want to go on YouTube, it might be easier, because there must some bad connections now. Again, one of the greatest thing of Venice are, of course, its palaces, and especially one that everybody knows is the Palazzo Vendramin Calergi, which was built at the end of the 1400s. And today is the Venice Casino, but this was a residence of many nobles for a long time. And it was the place where the German musician Richard Wagner, the musician of the Ride of the Valkyries, boom, 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 he died here in 1883. So there was also a part of it which is dedicated to him. And now it's, of course, a host the Venetian Museum. You can see there's kind of a mixture of early Renaissance and then also elements that re-echo the late Gothic style, especially these thin columns and the windows in this peculiar shape. Venice had a kind of a very peculiar architecture which reflects its history, its trades, its place in the world. But one of my favorite buildings in Venice, it's now a museum as well. But let's see, let's go on. This is the Bridge of Sights I haven't showed you before, which is here if it loads up. Yes, This is the Bridge of Sight that we saw before. And let's go back onto the Palazzo Grimani, which is considered one of the early Renaissance mansions built in Venice, as opposite to the Gothic, late Romantic and Gothic style. Now, towards the beginning of 1500s, Rome was invaded by the Lanzi, by the Germans, in 1527, which stayed there for a year. Many architects, many intellectuals had to escape, and many went to Venice. For example, among them, the architect Jacopo Sansovino, who was a Florentine architect, which basically bought the elements of Florentine and Roman Renaissance to Venice. That's how the Renaissance got to Venice. And he built the library, he built a number of beautiful buildings and churches. And the entrance to Palazzo Grimani is one of the early Renaissance mansions that celebrate the Renaissance and celebrate the Roman antiquity with these ancient Roman heads. And inside, there's a wonderful courtyard with columns. These are classical columns, like Ionic and Doric columns, which are a close reference to the basically to the Renaissance. And inside, there are a number of just see if I can get to. There are a number of rooms, but there is one which is really unique. It's the so-called Tribuna, which is right here, which was devoted to house the collection of marbles and statues. Is this one here? This is inside the palace. Now, this palace hosts the archaeological museum inside, so it's accessible, it's open to the public. And it's something that is mind-blowing. It has this kind of squared version of the Dome of the Pantheon, with even a Roman statue, the Ganymedes here, which is quite something. And so it's this large eagle basically kidnapping this boy Ganymedes. And then down here you see all the niches that would have had statues, busts, and there was quite a large collection around here. This room is magnificent, and is one of the first elements of Italian Renaissance that was brought to Venice. And after that, of course, with the architecture of Palladio, the Renaissance became basically the mainstream. The Renaissance style became the mainstream style in Venice. It's one of the little gems and pearls not to be missed, and also it's not very busy at all. I've never seen many people there as well. Another palace which is worth to be seen, it's a 17th century mansion, which is as well today a museum, and is the Palazzo Grassi, which is actually right here, and we can actually get to it here. It's right here. It's as well, today it's a museum, so you can actually see it. It's a museum of contemporary art, so it's a kind of an experience because, for example, let me just get it back from here. Okay. And it's the Palazzo Grassi. Palazzo Grassi was actually bought by the Pinot Foundation. Is the owner of the Lux Group, Louis Vuitton. So, and you could see, let's go on the street view here. So this is the court. This is a temporary exhibition. The artworks are owned by Pinot, and they are replaced. And you can see this is a court. It's actually been closed. And then this is the ground floor inside. We don't have that giant statue here with that, and so you can see a beautiful mansion again with this beautiful elegant marbles and columns and the grand staircase. So this was what it was like to be a wealthy Venetian back in time. So this is the grand staircase that leads upstairs, but there are also, peeping through, you see the members of the family there. This is 17th century frescoes. When you have, the nobles there getting their tea, and you can actually see them. So when you enter, you're kind of intimidated by these the owner of the house being basically there watching you from above. And so this is again a magnificent palace to visit in Venice. One's on many, but of course these are more accessible as being a museum. And I find very interesting the fact that having contemporary art, so modern art like this, which some of it is a bit crappy, some of it is interesting, and some of it is playful. There's a bit of everything. I don't know if you're into contemporary art, but it's definitely something worth to see. And then there's a number of installation and arts. Venice has a big relation with contemporary art because of the Biennale, which is an art exhibition as every other odd year. In fact, a few years ago, there were these giant hands sticking out of the Grand Canal supporting a building with the title support. This was an installation made by the contemporary artist Lorenzo Quinn, which is basically the son of Anthony Quinn. He actually looks a lot like his father, and he's done several works in Venice. He's a very clever sculptor and artist. This the hands I find them genius. The fact that there were these giant hands, and he was driving by the Grand Canal, seeing that the hands sticking on the wall. They're not there anymore, but they've been there for I think 6 months. And now Venice has a number of little alleyways and places where to go, and to basically the real way to discover it, just to wander and just get lost in all this little maze. 90% of the times you will end up in a dead end, so don't even think about. And everybody who is trying to find their way around in Venice, they know the fact that trying to use basically maps, or to use any modern system is useless. You have to rely on those giant yellow sign, and maybe if you find someone nice enough to basically telling you where to go, you might basically use them. Right in the center there is this hidden court, one of many hidden gardens and palaces, and in this case is the staircase, which is called Contarin del Bovolo. Boeti are basically the snails, so because it's kind of in Italian we call it chiocciola, kind of a snail-like. And this was built outside of the building, of course, to save room. And the building now is publicly owned, but it's a museum as well, so another place that you can see. And there's this wonderful small garden with these old wells. Venice had to rely on wells which captured the water, not from underground, but from a cistern that was built underground. So it was rainwater, which was drained to the floor, filtered to sand, and then with a very complex system ended up in that element. And here we have this beautiful 14th century staircase. This is the view from the inside. It's kind of mind-blowing, this kind of view of all the roofs, and you can see some Mark's bell tower and all this little magnificent staircase. It's an amazing solution to the lack of space that was the main problem with the Venetian being built basically on water. Most of the islands are built on palisades put down through the bed of the sand bed, and then they are basically supported by these beams underwater, so there isn't much. In fact, the Rialto Bridge, of which we have also, I think we have a live feed. No, these are the latest I played before. Let me just see. This is a song. This is not. No, maybe it was this one. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, so this is a live feed from the Rialto Bridge. This is live. This is just right now. And you can see the Rialto Bridge is quite overscale. It's quite a big marble bridge. And there were several architects who were asked how to rebuild the bridge. The bridge was originally made of wood. Now, Rialto has always been the center of the commercial and economic life of Venice. And you can see on the right, there's the Rialto Bridge, which is made of wood, and then it had an opening center. And he had several problems. It went on fire, and then it was damaged several times and rebuilt. This is a painting which is in the Galleria dell'Accademia in Venice with the with the miracle, with the gondolas there. And this is by Carpaccio. And yes, Carpaccio is the artist who gave the name to the beef carpaccio, which was invented in 1930s by the owner of the Harris Bar. Cipriani was the guy who, Cipriani, same Cipriani of the Cipriani hotels and restaurants. And he had the trade of, I think, a food trade. It was in the food industry, and it started to open like a small casual place where you could drink. And it was very successful because there were not that kind of places in Venice at that time, and it became very famous. And he invented the carpaccio and also the Bellini, the drink with the peach pulp in it, not the juice that you buy in the supermarket. It has to be freshly mushed peach pulp that you have to do it yourself, otherwise it's not a real Bellini. And of course the prosecco, the little bubbly wine. Don't use champagne because it's too bitter. It won't work with the peach. So there were a number of architects at the end of 1500s trying various solutions. Most of them thought that it would not be possible to make one big bridge crossing the canal because the pillars would have been too heavy, would have been sunk into the sands and would have been destroyed. In fact, also the wooden ones were supported by several pillars. But there was this guy called Antonio da Ponte, which da Ponte means bridge, so it's kind of named for an architect building a bridge, and he actually managed to build the bridge. And how are the foundation made? The foundation of every building in Venice, as you see, below the water, deep below, there are these palisades, all neat underneath the water. And under the water, because there's no oxygen, the wood doesn't rot. It was kept perfectly. And then on top of that, there is a brick structure covered with basically marble, which mostly was pietra d'Istria, which was imported from the other coast, from basically the Croatia and the Croatian coast, and so basically it made waterproof the water banks, and so it didn't go through. And one of the most interesting things to go in Venice, the thing what I love, is to wander and discover little churches, little miracle churches, little hidden gems in churches. Now, most churches, they have only a small tick of like €2 or €3. Many of them are even free. So like La Salute, for example, is free. So really wandering, doing a quest of churches like La Madonna dell'Orto or San Rocco. There are many, many churches you can do. I've chosen the Santa Maria dei Miracoli because, again, it's a 14th century design, 15th century design, early Renaissance, that it looks something really heavenly. He's got this kind of a stage kind of setting with a very high altar and the staircase as if you are in a theater, and this beautiful, entirely marble church with beautiful marbles and with this amazing vault. So this is definitely one of the little gems to go and search for while you are in Venice, and for like €2 or €3 is definitely worth it. You can also make like of a 10 churches circuit ticket that lasts several days, so you could see them all. And they're usually quiet, no crowds. Is really, really something beautiful. This is the one of the canalettos with the views of the Church of La Salute, with the gondolas, as I said before, being covered, having that kind of a hood. And the servants were usually dressed like in this kind of a Turkish way, because at that time in the Venetian domestics were mostly slaves. I know it's very sad to hear, but until the late 1700s, they still had slaves, which were mostly domestics and mostly Turks or Asians captured at sea in a Turkish boats. So and right behind, another little quest to do, right behind the Basilica of St. Mark's, there is the Church of San Zaccaria, right behind it here. And you could see right here, down here, which is a beautiful architecture. This one, it was again Sansovino, so early Venetian Renaissance, which has, there it is, beautiful architecture, which had San Zaccaria, which has basically a flooded crypt. And this is something that happened also in the Basilica of St. Mark. When the water gets high, the high tide, it gets submerged. even you could see the water from the floor coming up. Now there's a system which cost millions and millions to stop the waters, and the first time was activated last winter, but and it worked, but the next time it worked because they didn't had the warning of the tide being high. Is got increasingly higher in the last year. So Venice is not really sinking day and day, but the waters are getting higher. So of course the maintenance, the cost is really, really big. Consider that now barely 50,000 people live in Venice, in the island part of Venice. Most people live in the mainland. And so it's really, really difficult. This is the crypt underground, which is constantly flooded. So it's something really unique. It looks like out of a movie of like, one of the Indiana Jones movies reminds me, which in fact is in Milan. And of course, there's plenty of grand churches like the Santi Giovanni e Paolo. This church has also the tombs of the Doge. This is a large one, and there's also this beautiful statue opposite of Bartolomeo Colleoni, which was tricked by the Venetian Senate. He was a military leader, and he wanted to have a statue of himself in exchange for leaving his inheritance to the Republic of Venice. But he wanted to have his statue in front of St. Mark's. Now, as I said at the beginning, no one was allowed to have his statue in front of the Basilica of St. Mark. So instead of the Basilica of St. Mark, which is right here, they did his statue, not here, where you see there are no statues, except, the patron saints, but right here in Santi Giovanni e Paolo. Right here, this building here is called the Scuola di San Marco, which was basically a congregation, kind of association that had, a religious purpose, but also it was a kind of a mutual society, similar to a pension fund, and in this former religious congregation, you pay the fee and you get certain benefits. And so, the Venice Senate said, okay, he said he wanted the statue in front of San Marco, and this is San Marco. It's the Scuola di San Marco. It's not Basilica, but he didn't specify that. And so they were satisfied with having, obeyed to the will of Bartolomeo Colleoni by having the statue made. The statue was cast by one of the greatest sculptors of the 1400s, Andrea del Verrocchio, who was basically the master of Leonardo da Vinci. So it's a very, very important artist. It's a beautiful masterpiece. It's something that you could do probably only in Italy, that you could see a great master's artwork in every church, in every corner. You get to a city center. This is not just Venice. This is most Italian cities. You just wander in the city center and you see a grand statue made of grand master of ancient Roman art. And then you can find these beautiful churches, plenty of masterpieces by artists of the Renaissance, of the Baroque, something really, really unique, of which I urge people to profit of, because it's something that is something to me the most interesting part about traveling in the Italian cities. You don't have to pay a ticket to enter into a museum, and especially the experience of the museum is a kind of a fake experience of art, because you're there for that purpose. While when this art was created, it wasn't somewhere meant to be locked away in a place where it was looked after, when you have to pay to go to, and you had to, you wanted to go there to see some art. Art was everywhere, was their ordinary life, was their everyday life. Every palace, every church, every government building had some amazing, beautiful art inside, covering almost everything. And this is the proof of that. You can see the beautiful Passava. This is, which was basically seat of like an association, like an insurance company, something that today would be a skyscraper. So I really love always thinking, trying to go back and making people feeling that to go back, or meant to live back in that area with that kind of relationship with art day to day, in every moment, every aspect of life. Consider especially that these were built by rich people, but most people were extremely poor at that time. And by seeing the society investing so much in so little, it's also something that we have no idea of. Speaking of an artist, one of the greatest Venetian was definitely Tintoretto, which his house basically still preserved. But it's not about the Tintoretto house I want to speak of, because we just did yesterday a talk about Tintoretto. But it is, which is somewhere around here, it is about, let me see if I can find it right here. It's Madonna dell'Orto. It's nearby the Madonna dell'Orto. Right here. So this is the Church of Madonna dell'Orto, where Tintoretto is buried, another wonderful church with several paintings by Tintoretto as well. And then here's Tintoretto home. That's his home. And next to it, This is home, and next to it, right here, let's take. There are these Moors here. One is here with a turban, and in fact, this bridge is called, Campo de Mori and Ponte de Mori. It's another one is here is a servant, like a kind of Sherpa bringing, the goods of the. And then you see Fondamenta dei Mori. The Mori are basically the Moors. So is at that time they refer, to the if they were Northern African Muslims, or if they were Arabs, or if they were Turks, they were all called Moors. And then you could see this one is missing the head, but has the turban. This decoration was probably made because there was a merchant here from the Near East, or was sort of a decoration made. But it's very, very peculiar. I love that. There's also a nice restaurant where to eat some delicious Venetian food. I was tempted to include food, but I decided not to. This is the pictures of the Moors that you could see, and there are thousands of little emblems, marble slabs, inscription, just wandering into Venice. And one of my favorite is the narrowest, the tiniest Calle. Calle is the name in Venice you call the street. This was a couple of summers ago. I went, basically take a number of pictures for making tours, and then you could see this is the considered the narrowest. The second tiniest, narrowest street in Europe, if not in the world, and definitely one of the narrowest in Venice. I couldn't fit, to be honest. It's basically, I don't know, less than a foot wide, so I guess more people would not fit. Surprisingly, there isn't a sign saying don't go in there, otherwise you'll get stuck. And I mentioned the plague, and I didn't want to talk too much about the plague because being during the pandemic, but maybe we can relate to that. And the good thing is, the people who basically make it through physically but also mentally, they really enjoyed after the rebirth and the good times. So the last part of this talk, the last few minutes, I want to dedicate it to the hope that the pandemic will be over soon and we'll be able to resume traveling. And we'll be glad that they're going to show you Italy and Europe in style, especially showing you the inside, the lesser known aspect, giving you the context and general picture and some authentic experience, but mostly the true lived experience of art and culture, and really feeling what meant for those people back then who built these places. And this is the Church of the Redentore, which is an amazing space. If you think that this was designed by Palladio, who died the year after the plague. And he never saw this completed. He only thought about this space, he only imagined this space. And when you're inside, you can actually feel the space, you can actually see it, what he wanted, how this space and the volumes is really a beautiful place. Now, I won't tell you more about that because I'm going to do a talk about Palladio, only specific about Palladio's churches and Palladio's architecture, especially Palladio's villas in the mainland, in the Treviso, on the Brenta, and on the mainland of Venice. So I'm going to talk about that mostly, but also about this church in more depth. But it's really a beautiful place, very, very, I would say classical to a level. Is almost archetypical. The type of facade, it reminds about the Pantheon, reminds us about the most beautiful architecture ever built. In fact, many buildings in England in the 18th century, 17th, 18th century, in Northern America, especially in the United States, it's actually designed after it. For instance, the Monticello Villa by Thomas Jefferson, it's quintessentially a copy of a villa by Palladio. Once a year, the third weekend of July, there is a procession of pilgrims going to do the Thanksgiving for the end of the plague, which ended with a token, as I said, of a third of the population, nearly 50,000 Venetians. Originally was built a ship, now they make a more permanent one. So people can walk across this canal here, which is quite big, Canale della Giudecca, let me just say. And then you can see down here. And so it's quite a distance, and the church is here. It's quite a distance, and it's covered by land. And for the weekend, you can go. It ends up with, of course, fireworks, a big celebration, and everybody's getting drunk. The smell of alcohol is incredible, and there's crowds everywhere. So it's fun, but it's also very, very busy. And of course, lots of people they watch the fireworks from a boat, from a gondola, or whatever floats. And opposite on the left is another church by Palladio as well, the Church of San Giorgio Maggiore, which we'll talk as well when I will be talking about Palladio. Now we are about towards the end of this celebration, and I hope you enjoyed this gift from us. Sorry about the technical difficulties, and we have decided to do a Zoom call, but then eventually too many people sign up, so we would not be able to have the Zoom. Anyway, if there are questions, I'll be taking them. Joanna, if you can just see if there's any questions via the chat, I don't know, YouTube or on Facebook. Can you hear me? Can you confirm you can hear me? And I will be just taking the questions if there are any on did you miss the audio for a bit? I think this time is not our fault. This time I think it's Facebook is not the live on Facebook is not 100%. I don't know why. So basically the cruise ship. So of course a cruise ship is a huge part of travel, and there's a lot of convenience. I've never been on a cruise ship. I've actually been invited as a guest speaker on a cruise ship. It means that I don't have to pay anything. I can bring a guest 50% off, and I have to give a talk every day before the next destination. I've never done that because my wife says she doesn't want to be somewhere with me where she cannot walk out. So it's on the ship. If you're in a ship in the middle of the sea, it's kind of difficult. Just kidding. We never had the chance. Maybe we'll do it in the future year. Anyway, this is where currently the cruise ship dock. There are talks about using the other port, which I think it will also be more appropriate. It would be this one here. Down here, Marghera is the port here, right at the entrance. Marghera, this was the industrial port down here. So, no, sorry, it's down here. Porto Marghera here. So they want to use this terminal, which, as you can see, is very close. When you get here, you have to take a kind of an aerial train. There's this train here called People Mover. Costs a couple of dollars just to get across. 5 minutes takes you here. But then here, you can either walk, and you can walk a lot. It might take 45-50 minutes to get to some marks, and then another if you want to explore more, it takes even longer. So it's or alternatively you can get a taxi. Water taxi right here, which drops you off anywhere in time. It costs about 60 euros just the single transfer for up to 5 or 6 people. So it's it's doable. With the cruise ship, they do cross the canal here, so you could see, basically you see the waterfront and you could see St. Mark's Square. But there are talks about spanning the cruise ship into the canal, because problem is the cruise ship has got several thousand tons that basically push in the water and push against the foundational buildings. So that is potentially, and it brings up a lot of sand from the bottom. So the waters get dirty, they get the dirty look. The creatures in the flora and the fauna in the waters don't do very well. I mean, it has a very huge impact. So I hope to find a solution. So there'll still be cruising going to Venice, but crossing right in the center, it's like driving in the bus in the city center, in a narrow city center. What are they doing about the floods and how often they happen? The floods happen from when it rains, basically. So from November till April, and on a 12-hour circle. So there is a siren that goes off in the evening. It tells you if the flood is going to come up. It goes off 6 hours before the flood comes up, and is basically based on the tide. So the tide has a kind of deep impact of the lagoon. The main reason for that is because during the years they've been there is a natural aspect that all the rivers that bring waters into the lagoon, they actually tend to raise the level. There's also the fact that the waters from these 3 openings, the Lido, the Pellestrina one, and the last one down here, the Chioggia one, basically they enter through the salty water enters through the lagoon and raise the level. The worst one was in 1966, but it affected all Italy because of the heavy rains. So the rain have a play, and they can get up to 110 centimeters, 3 feet, 4 feet. So what they've done, they spent 8 billion euros. It's eye-watering amount of money. They could have given hundreds of thousands to every Venetian just to buy another house somewhere else, to build this kind of giant chambers right here that are metal and hollow. They get filled with water and they go down, and then whenever there's the tide coming, they are emptied of the water and the air is pushed up, so they lift up like giant boxes, and they close up to 7 feet of water coming. They've used them once successfully. They tried to use other times, it didn't work. And it's going on for 20 years now. They've just been finished. But there's been problems with briberies. The mayor of Venice has been arrested. There's the usual kind of stuff when you have this kind of public money spent into one project. Of course, everybody wants a piece of a cake. And hopefully this will work. The project is called Moses, which it's kind of name for someone who's trying to stop the water. So I guess it's quite an interesting way. Have you got any other question, Giovanni? Is there any other question? If not, I will just let me know. If not, if you have a question later, we'll also can answer later on. Let me just summarize what we do. Do you see the what? Yeah, I saw the videos of them. I didn't actually see them. I haven't been able to go to Venice for some time now. But the bodies, they are melted into the canals. No, I'm kidding. When people pass away, how do they dispose of the dead? So that's a very good question. They don't melt them in the canals. You can't even disperse the ashes. There's only specific places where you can do that. That's one of the things I'm requesting most by people. Oh, Mario, we want to go back. Well, actually, my mother passed away some years back with all her ashes. We wanted to disperse them in the water. So we wanted to disperse them in the place that she visited was meaningful to her, which I think it's highly illegal. So as a brand in the country, we would do anything for you, but anything legal. So that thing, it cannot be done. Let's go back to the question. So the deads were buried into the churches. Most of the churches were basically also cemeteries. There were chapels that were sponsored by individual families, and then people were basically buried there. And so you can still find many tombs in the churches. For example, Tintoretto is buried in Santa Madonna dell'Orto, in the Church of the Frari, right here. This large church here. This is where Titian is buried. Right here, Santa Maria Gloriosa dei Frari, and also Antonio Canova's tomb is there. There's not his whole body in there, but part of his body is in there. That's a long story. We got also Canova tour upcoming, so coming next. And so there is a cemetery island, this one, the cemetery of San Michele, and this was basically created after the Editto di Saint Cloud. So in 1790s, the French, all the countries under the French Empire, which included Venice and Italy at that time, had to create cemeteries outside the city walls. So this island, the island of San Michele, and the one next, were chosen to become a cemetery. So it was there was a beautiful. This is again a beautiful church by Antonio Godussi. And then the cemetery was created, and that's where they buried the people. Basically, on the All Saints' Day, November the 1st, they make actually a bridge with boats that goes from the Fondamente Nove, right here, to the cemetery island. So there's actually a walkway, and then it's just halfway between Canareggio and the island of Murano. This is Murano when they do the glass blowing thing. And if you've been to the airport, Tessera, which is right here, you take a water taxi or a water bus or whatever goes by water. This is the way it goes. Usually, either it depends if you go on this way. It either goes through Murano or just around it through here, but you'll see Murano on your way back, because the public transportation, they cannot just wander around the lagoon. They have to take certain kind of waterways. They actually sign the signpost to follow the route, so that's why you could see them, and there's also speed limits and all that. Let's take other questions here. Actually, by the way, There is a very famous and very controversial American citizen. There is Igor Stravinsky, the musician, buried on this island. There's also a very controversial American citizen here, Ezra Pound. Do you know who he was? He was 20th century greatest poet, but unfortunately he was a fascist. He supported the Italian fascists during the war, hence he was arrested by the Allied. He was taken back to US. He should have been executed for treason, but he spent 12 years in a mental institution after being able to be freed and return to Italy. And he died in Venice. He lived in Venice. He died in 1970s. He was a genius. I mean, he was evil in his anti-Semitism and in his ideas supporting fascists. There's no excuse for that, for sure. But he was one of the greatest poetic minds ever. And he was the greatest poet of the 20th century. His cantos are really beautiful. It's sublime. It's such a shame, but it's a sublime poet, really. So the cantos are really wonderful. It's inspired by Dante Alighieri, the great Italian poet. He was also a translator of Chinese. Okay, let's take back more questions. Do you see dolphins? Dolphins. What would be the top 5 places to start with when you first Venice, please? So there are 2 types of Venice experiences. The one that is the classic. So you would want to see the Rialto Bridge, which you can actually observe also from the top of this building, the Fondaco dei Tedeschi. It has a free rooftop where you could go. You have to book, but you can go up here on this terrace and you can enjoy the view on. Let's see if we can pop in. No, we're actually at the bottom. Anyway, is this building here, Fondaco dei Tedeschi. And so definitely the Rialto Bridge and the market nearby. There's a food market, a fish market here. You can see which is amazing. Also the restaurants here by the Rialto down here. There's a number of restaurants that are really, really good for a nice lunch or evening meal. There's some nice places around here. And then of course you must do, of course, it's the complex of the Palazzo Ducale and the Basilica of St. Mark's. And Palazzo Ducale is definitely worth the visit, and which is really, really beautiful. And then, of course, I think the La Salute, it's nice because walking down there or going there, it's nice, this neighborhood, because it's quiet and the church is beautiful. And then definitely the view on Venice from the top of the tower of the island of San Giorgio, that you can get there to a ferry. The ferry only costs like 6-7 euros, or you can get a water taxi there. But make sure you got one going back, because it's might get hard to get one. So definitely you can go inside the church, which is amazing. You can get on the bell tower and enjoy a fantastic view. Then, of course, if you're interested in contemporary art, the 2 galleries I mentioned, the Guggenheim, definitely, and then also the Palazzo Grassi are definitely worth a visit. Then if you want a more off the beaten tracks visits, there are the museums here on Piazza, inside San Marco, the archaeological museum here, or the Palazzo Grimani that I showed you before, and the other small churches. The quest for the churches is definitely get into one of the first churches that have a ticket, buy the pass for all of them, and just go and do a quest to see all the churches. You might find some surprises. And one beautiful place, but it's only open when there is basically the exhibition of art, are the gardens of the Biennale every odd year. So it should be in this year. I'm not sure if they do it. They do a contemporary art exhibition, and also the Arsenal, which is usually with the Teatro delle Tese when they do a number of performances. So this kind of things, I think, if you get measure, I mean, how wide, how big, how important it is. This is the entrance to the Arsenal is amazing as well, with the Venetian lions, the turrets. You have really the feel of a military power here, an industrial power, and a trade power back in times. Let's see other question. So, what is Palladio? So the question should. Who is Palladio? Palladio was this architect who lived in the 1500s. He died in 1577, if I'm not mistaken. And I will do a talk about Palladio in next Saturday. It will be, yeah. So Palladio basically was the architect who translated the Italian Renaissance architecture into a language which became universal, which became classic, which became a standard of classic architecture, and basically it was inherited especially by the British and spread to all over the British Empire. So we call it colonial architecture, but basically also the architecture after the independence of the United States. For example, the Capitol building, most of the buildings on the Mall in Washington, D.C., they're all Palladian architecture. So basically, he created a language translating the Italian Renaissance into something that was not just Italian anymore, was universal. And so on this talk, I'm going to explain what this meant for architecture, not just back then, but even today. And I've got some surprises for that. It's a very interesting one. Now, let me just get more question. It is allowing visitors from UK. I think the problem at the moment is more, Italy is pretty much all, there's a system of different colors: yellow, orange, and red. So yellow, of course, it's okay with certain restriction to travel, and red, there's only a few zones. The numbers have been dropping, but I'm not sure about Easter time. I don't think by Easter. In the summer, you'll be definitely going to travel from Europe to Italy. I'm not sure from overseas, but definitely from the UK. The problem at the moment is that the UK has very strict quarantine process to get back home. So it's if you want to move to Italy, you won't have any problem. If you want to go back home, you have to check that too. I think it'd be safe to travel probably end of December, because as soon as people get vaccinated and people get better in reopening and getting, but museums are now open. For example, in Rome, museums are open during from Monday to Friday. In Venice, they haven't reopened yet. They will reopen after Easter. So all the Venetian museums are now closed. They will open, I think, April the 1st. At the moment, if things can go. Do we have to isolate? When you get there, depending on the region, depending on the status, you might just need to take a test. There's certain regions, because it's decided on the local authorities. So certain regions, they do have a quarantine of 10 days, which unless you can travel for a month, it's not worth it. But I would just wait till things get easier to travel. We may have both vaccinations too, will be allowed to visit Venice. They are talking, it's not enforced yet. It doesn't matter if you have vaccination or not yet. I'm sure it will be. I think in a couple of months there will be kind of a passport. If you already had the COVID and you had one shot of vaccine, or if you had both shots of vaccine, you should be able to travel. But we just have a new government. It was created basically these days, and so we'll see what the rules would be on the new government. What was the name of the good restaurant close to Moorish statues? Osteria do Mori. Let me see here. But if you go into Venice, you can inquire on the website. We have a free, service. You can inquire for your advice on the trip. Things like restaurant recommendation, we give them free. We can also design a trip, and you can decide if you want to, take a trip with us or not. But like custom design tours, custom made tours, and it's right here, Osteria do Mori. Osteria do Mori is by the Tintoretto houses right here. Let me just get through. Let me just load it. Osteria l'Orto dei Mori. There it is. You can. Okay. Paul Andrew Bowden, does the Orient Express? So the Orient Express still does. It's now owned by the hotel luxury chain, I can never remember the name, Belmont, are the most outrageously expensive hotels in the world, also the most beautiful. So definitely, if you can afford that, it's definitely worth sharing. And the Orient Express has, I think they have 3 or 4 routes. Not sure, but it is in Venice. I'm not sure currently because of the COVID. I don't think they're operating, of course, but they were operating till everything was open, and and it's beautiful seeing that in trains. I've never been on it, but I've seen it in the train station several times. Even the people handling the luggage, they all have they're quite scruffy now. The luggage handlers in the they don't have a uniform, just have the high of a vest thing, and there's not much, it's not very romantic. There's not much to it. But those, they're all like impeccable, and they dress better than most of the guests. And so it's definitely a great experience. I've never done that, but I've seen it, and it still does. You have to check on the Belmont website, and they have everything there. So that public transportation ticket. Yes, there is a ticket for the water boats, the water ferry. The ferries goes on boats and on the waters, and it costs $7.50 single fare, or there is a option to buy a return, or the best, if you think of using it intensively, you can do a day or multi-day ticket, which you could use, as much as you want for the old lagoon, so you can get to Murano, to Burano. So I think to see and experience Venice, you have to consider at least 3 full days, which means that if you arrive in the evening, you have to stay an extra night. And because you might want to spend a day or half day going to Murano and Burano, you'll spend a full day in Venice, and then you want to spend a more relaxing day. Maybe you go to watch a show, a concert, and you have a lazy, long afternoon with a nap, and you want to just, do things more relaxing on another day. This is just the minimum, but of course, the longer. One has to pay every time one goes on the go. So the gondola, so there are 2 types of gondolas. Now, the gondolas also have a kind of a ferry service. It's on the Grand Canal. It's not always active. It costs a couple of euros, and they take you from one end on. It's called traghetto, and there are several, but they take you basically from one end to another of the Grand Canal. There are several crossings. There's one here, for example, and there are large. You see, there's some gondolas. I don't see it, but there's some that are a bit more basic, and they are the ones where you actually are standing. It's actually considered rude if you sit on those. They're like they take up to 12, 15 people, and you just tip, and they just take you across. And that's a public transportation. The actual gondolas, these ones here, they are basically kind of a tourist attraction, like taxi. So there's a flat fee. It's 80 euros for half an hour, or 100 euros for a little more. And they do the kind of a loop. So depending on where you catch them, they go kind of in a loop around the block, and they're on the Grand Canal usually. There are several places. And they are, it's their cash only business. You go there and you just pay whatever, and you can tip them if they're, if you feel like that. And that is a flat fare. Is the same for everybody. So if you have larger groups, you can bargain, but usually that's the flat fare. And also the speedboats, this one here, which are water taxis, they have also kind of they are fares which are established by the government, so they're just flat fares. And if you pre-book or book in advance, and there might be different fares, but usually that is the cost. So the gondola sits up to 6 people, and you can also buy like those tours where you pay 20, 30 bits and you share with people you don't know, but I'm not sure this will be back soon. Which question? I missed some questions. Let me see if you can. This was a Jewish quarter. Yes, so there is a Jewish ghetto, actually the oldest ghetto in the world, which was an invention of the Venice Senate, is right up here, just off the Ponte delle Guglie. You can actually see it's this part here, the Ghetto Vecchio, the Jewish ghetto with the different schools, the different synagogues here. It's quite narrow. You can recognize because the buildings are much taller. In 1516, the Jews were basically segregated in this region, which was called the ghetto already. So the word ghetto, which today is universally used, was actually taken after the place of the name was already there. And the Jewish population was not allowed to leave the building, enough for a good reason. The Jews that converted to Christianism could not go back to visit their relatives or their family. And the whole point of segregating the Jews was not just to protect or to preserve or whatever. It was a process of trying to eliminate the presence of the Jews. So it was really, really kind of a sad thing, which later on opened also in Rome in 1555. The Pope also opened one in Rome. You can see that the Ghetto Novo is a very kind of isolated island that can very easily be closed off. And here there's also the Jewish Museum. That if you have an interest in Jewish history, in European Jewish history, it's a very interesting it's a very interesting visit, because this is the origins of the very concept of the ghetto, which wasn't a kind of urban solution to give a nice house to the Jews. On the contrary, was like a kind of a way to keep under control the population in the numbers and eventually push them towards conversion by putting a number of limitation, which of course, if the population is in an area, in a ghetto, you can actually, separate them from the rest of the people and then slowly reduce their numbers towards the elimination of that. So it was not very much different than the Nazi camps. Of course, it wasn't a harsh condition of living in the sense of hard work, of killing, but it was really, there were a number of limitations, there were a number of humiliation the Jewish community had to go through. So it's really important. There's now, of course, cultural centers, museums, because the memory of the Jews must be, and what was done to Jewish community in Europe must be always remembered, not forgotten. And there is a mosaics on Christmas along the canal, the Museum of History on it. I visit every visit. It's the one on the Palazzo, I think it's on the Palazzo Salviati. It was made by the family who owned, actually, I'm not sure if I can locate it now, own actually a tile. No, it was a mosaic factory, like a tile factory. So that's why they decorated it all together. Let me see. I'm not sure if I'm able to locate it now. It's towards the end. Isn't that here? I'm not sure if I'm locating now. Is there any other question around? Giovanni, you said I lost some questions. Okay, let's wrap this up, and then I have a last surprise for you, because I haven't mentioned Vivaldi, the River Tree, because of course Vivaldi now is omnipresent, but I have a wonderful piece by Vivaldi, which is the last one that Vivaldi basically, I'm sorry, it's the best one that Vivaldi composed, is the Concerto per il violino scordato, and it's the second movement, which is one of the beautiful plays. Ella has asked, any cheap but decent hostels, Airbnb? There's plenty of Airbnb and hostels. One which is I mean, there are several next to the train station, but they are very similar to most of the places near the train station. So they're not the cheapest, they're not the nicest, but they're very convenient. So if you want convenience, they're around here. But one of the beautiful ones, it's here on the Giudecca. It's the hostel, I can't remember its name. It's a chain. There's a hostel in the Giudecca. I can't remember the name of the chain, but they have hostels in Berlin, they have hostels all over Europe, and they are all of the same standard. So that is really good. The only thing is you have to take the ferry every day to get back to the mainland, but it costs, consider like a tenner a day to have the 12 euros a day to have the, it's a little bit more. If you go round trip, it costs about 15 euros to get to Venice. So, you spend probably half that you spend on mainland. So, and that is really nice. There are other places on the Lido right here. To answer the other question, there are beaches and places to swim. Here on the Lido, yes, this is all basically the nice beaches you can swim. You could see, this is what, in Italy we have stabilimenti. Basically, you have to pay to use the beach. They rent you an umbrella and the bed. There are parts that are free, like here, but you might want to get one of these, and for a cost of basically an expensive drink, you can buy you can rent a place here. And yeah, this is nice. It's close, and there's also hotels around here on the Lido, but you might want to stay on the Giudecca or in the center. Airbnb, there's plenty. There's several around here. Not on the train station, but on this side here, near the Riva dei Tolentini, on this side here, because it's central, but at the same time, it's not the place where most people will go normally. So around here also you can look. What's the best time to come in terms of weather? It's either the spring or the fall. Summer is too hot. So if you can avoid the summer, I've been there many times in July and August, but it's really, really, and there's a lot of mosquitoes and things. The best season is from March to June. And then again, March, April can be a bit rainy, but June, July. And personally, I love the winter in Venice. Best. I love February in Venice. I love November, December. That's my favorite time of the year in Venice. The mist, the cold. I don't mind the cold that gets into your bones, but it's really, really beautiful. There's not too many people, and so although now there's virtually no one, so that's a bit too. It's a bit too less. And any other questions? That's the thing I missed a bit. Okay. Okay, now let's go to the last part, and then I've got this surprise for you. I got a beautiful piece by Vivaldi, which is not the first season, which is not the thing that everybody knows. It's the concerto per violino su due cori. Now, just let me illustrate what we do with these virtual tours, which are quite successful. So every Saturday and Sunday, there's one tour about a different topic. So for next 2 Saturdays, there'll be one about an aspect of Venice. So Andrea Palladio and the Venetian Renaissance and the Venetian villas. And then Sunday 21st, we go to the Vatican Museums, the collection of the popes. We'll see the archaeological part and part of the collection of Vatican Museums. Virtually, the talk lasts about an hour. And then the next weekend, Antonio Canova and the Ideal Beauty, the life and the artwork by Canova. This is the beautiful Love and Psyche, which is a statue, which is the Louvre. The good thing about this talk is that you can travel in space and time, very, very easily. And then the next weekend and the next Sunday, we go to Rome about the myth of ancient Rome. We'll see the relation between Emperor Augustus and the fields of Mars. So buildings like the Pantheon, the Araceli, the altar of the Arapacis, and the tomb of Augustus, which has been recently restored and will be shortly open to the public. So, and then there will be a program with several other talks about several topics, Pompeii, different articles. We'll be doing a poll about the talks that we like us to do. So you can also ask for talks you like. We also do private virtual tours. They start at 100 euros per session, up to 10 people, and you can invite whatever you want. We can go up to 100 people, and they are private and they are custom made, and they are also, as I said, open virtual tours. We do a free tour once a month. And next month we'll do a free tour about the Pantheon and the secrets of the Pantheon. We're going to go inside the Pantheon, even in the hidden rooms inside the walls. And we also offer gift cards and a number of other activities. Please visit our website. Now that I've finished the virtual tour and I told you about the upcoming virtual tour, I'll thank you with the last bit of the video and this beautiful piece of music by Vivaldi. Vivaldi was definitely the artist that more than everyone else has embodied what means to be basically a Venetian. Now, just a few seconds, I'm about to launch the concert and the video of the thing. So thank you very much again. I'm Mario Bernardi. If you enjoyed this tour, please consider either buying a tour in the coming weeks, or gift it one to someone that think you might appreciate one of the tours, or write a review, or you can also tip your guide by using the links that we provided by email. Now, be aware that on the Facebook groups and events, there are some scammers that redirect you to websites where to access you need a credit card. They are not related with us, they're scammers. So be aware, only buy from the Grand Tour website, the Grand Tour Europe or the Grand Tour.it. In case you have doubt, just email us, because we had that before. And we will be giving you a discount code for the next 24 hours to buy discounted gift cards and discounted tours. You will receive this discount codes via email if you are registered for the events, or you can email us, or we will publish also that shortly on the group, Facebook group, Virtual Experiences, where I believe many of you are already on that group. Now, this is the handwriting by Vivaldi, which was one of the most talented musicians of the 18th century, completely forgotten after he died in the mid mid 18th century. He died poor, actually, aged in his 60s, in Vienna, not even in Venice. And his tomb doesn't even exist anymore because the church where he was buried in Vienna was destroyed. And then his memory was almost erased. There were only a few pieces that were known because Sebastian Bach made a transcription of some of Vivaldi pieces. And his music was rediscovered at the beginning of the 20th century. And now, over 500 concertos have been rediscovered, some 80 operas, and a number of other compositions. This is one of the most beautiful concerts. I think this is one of the most beautiful concerts ever written. And definitely this second movement is my favorite Vivaldi piece. So I leave you with this about 5 minutes of music, and I put again the video of the drone. So we will fly over Venice and our hearts go back to Venice. Again, happy St. Valentine's Day. Hope you enjoyed this virtual tour, and look forward to many more to come. Thank you very much. Thank also to Giovanni for the support, although support was a bit sketchy today, I have to say. I have to raise a complaint. Okay, let's go. Thank you very much.